Today we discuss the crossover of Advent and Hanukkah. Well, today is the second week of Advent and the fourth night of Hanukkah. And I think I want to point to a story I found on the Hill when looking up something regarding the similarities between the Christian Advent and the 8 nights of Hanukkah. And I found this extraordinary article from the pandemic era, but I think it applies to this year because unfortunately Jewish Americans and Jewish all over the world are a little more pensive or a little more nervous this menorah lighting. But I encourage those afraid to light the menorah proudly, because the Jewish people are a resilient people. Now, do I think that Netanyahu's actions are harming American Jews because the fact of the bombings are being highlighted, and that is angering a pro-Palestine movement that doesn't give one crap about innocent Jewish people in America? That's the problem. And furthermore, they don't even want to talk to Jewish people to work out differences. They'd rather spit in American Jews' faces or tell them to go to hell. At what point does what the pro-Palestinian protesters are saying about the Jews, at what point is that considered hate speech? D.A. Bragg, I have to ask. But at the same time, Hanukkah is bringing the Jewish community together for menorah lightings, both big in the city and small in their own homes. And I think that's a beautiful thing in a time of chaos and turmoil and worry about families in Israel. But I want to point to you on the second week of Advent, this article by actually someone who served as the governor of New Jersey for 90 minutes. His name is Mr. Farmer Jr. I'm getting the full name here. John Farmer Jr. And John Farmer Jr. is someone that held the office of governor and lieutenant governor. He was in the office from 1999 to 2002. And he was the Attorney General of the state of New Jersey. And John Farmer Jr., during the pandemic in 2020, talked about how Advent and Hanukkah underscore the virtue of patience. This was back on December 13th, 2020. And he mainly made this a pandemic-related article because it was right in the thick of the pandemic, the first Christmas during the pandemic. And here's what he said. And I think this line from the article is as much important then as it is now. If ever a year demanded, however, that the seasons of celebration, of patience, waiting, and renewal of spiritual life be observed as intended, he says, surely it is 2020. I would add, Mr. Farmer Jr., surely it is 2023 as well. Surely the time has come to follow the biblical teaching that whatever you do for the least of my brothers, you do for me. Surely this is beyond politics, beyond libertarian orthodoxy. We should, in other words, cultivate and celebrate the holiday season, the forgotten virtues of patience, of waiting. Advent celebrates waiting on 4 successive Sundays, observing the centuries-long patience of the Jewish people in waiting for the deliverance, as described in the words of the Advent hymn, O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel. Successive Sundays observe the peace that comes from acknowledging the need for assistance and forecasting its arrival. The faith and love and waiting that can redeem the world's suffering, embodied in the shepherds and the magi. And finally, the joy that comes from realizing our salvation comes not from the deeds of the high and the mighty, but from the humblest sources imaginable. In the Christian story, a baby born to poor parents in a stable. The lighting of the menorah candles on Hanukkah celebrates the relighting of the temple in Jerusalem, when oil that should have lasted for only 1 day kept the temple lit for 8. Even for non-believers, there is power in the myth and metaphor of these stories. They speak to patience rewarded, to keeping the light of hope burning through the darkest of days. I know he wrote this in 2020, but John Farmer's article can relate to the second week in Advent, as both Christians and Jews see the struggles that the Israeli people are going through, that the Jewish people of America and around the world that have nothing to do with the conflict in Israel versus Hamas are going through right now. I feel like some of these words he's saying in this article can apply to now. This has been a singular year, marked by conflict, disease, and death. It is ending with the virus. Well, he says the virus, creating as never before. Now, couldn't you also say the Hamas-Israeli war has been a virus that the Middle East has dealt with for decades on end? The Palestinians and Israelis have always been at odds. And I mean the governments, not so much the people. The people want peace on both sides. Not the governments, and not those that work for the governments of Israel and Palestine. But for the first time, this virus that has been the conflict in the Middle East has spread here and has really, really brought worry and unnerved feelings for the Jewish people, because there are tons more pro-Palestine protesters who are doing more than just protesting. They're saying hate speech by telling an innocent Jewish woman, burn in hell. That happened yesterday or a couple days ago. It's hate speech when you say gas the Jews, is it not? And why aren't they being prosecuted for hate crimes saying that, advocating for that? So I thank the calendar in a way for being here to light the menorah again, to celebrate Christmas again. Because in those times, there's still this hope that we can get out of the captivity that Hamas has held the world in now, because we're all worried. We sane-minded people are worried about the hostages, are we not? And the captivity that has been put on American Jewish people because of these actions between Israel and Hamas cannot be ignored this Hanukkah. So may God not only ransom captive Israel, but ransom captive the Israelis that have nothing to do with this war, and the Jewish people that have nothing to do with this war. And for Christians who try and impose Jesus Christ on a group that doesn't want to acknowledge him that doesn't believe he's come yet? Can you ease off on that and just accept that, your Jewish brothers and sisters are suffering and they don't need to be reminded to believe in Christ this year? That will come in their own time when they feel it, if they ever do. But they do not need to hear the evangelistic approach to Christmas right now. They need to just hear the hope that Jesus brings. But don't tell them, hey, believe in him. You got to believe in him or you're going to be, going somewhere else in heaven. That's not what the Jewish people need to hear right now. So this Advent and Hanukkah can be used to unify two very strong forces that not only want to, rid the world of terrorism, but bring peace and calm. I have said this over and over again. Do you know that Jewish people have protested just by rallies and really a jubilee in a sense of songs, of hope, of prayer. They've done it calmly. They're not advocating for ceasefire in a violent way. Now, a lot of the Jews are not advocating for ceasefire at all because I believe, like they do, that a ceasefire means Hamas gets to load up and do more harm to Israel, which we don't want either. But isn't it crazy that the protesters that say ceasefire and peace and whatnot are the least peaceful group, aka pro-Palestinian protesters, are the least peaceful group? Something is not right with them. But I applaud the Jewish people for being the better and bigger man in this situation. Who, when they come together, it is peaceful, it is prayerful, it is Christly, believe it or not. I mean, the point of Christmas season is to honor the birth of Christ, and very few times in the Bible was he ever actually violent. Yes, he did the marketplace flipping of when he saw the church and the temple, when he saw the temple try and make money in the Lord's house. But he also came at life with this calmness that we're actually seeing from the Jewish people right now. That peace through strength and staying together will win over violence. And I applaud them for not causing chaos when they rally for their brothers and sisters in captivity in Israel. And when they rally against Hamas and their atrocities against Israel. Because there are times where I look internally and I say, man, these Palestinian protesters that advocate such hateful things, don't they need to be taught a lesson? But maybe karma, and maybe karma will come to them. And their hate speech that should be prosecuted. Their hate speech that college campus presidents this Hanukkah week could not even condemn. But they make a big deal about Jews again. Harvard hates Jews. That's a problem? Not the fact that Harvard's president, UPenn's president, and MIT's president could barely say, yes, we condemn hate speech that says for the genocide of Jews. Yes, it's a fiery podcast on the second week of Advent. And I know the main message should be that that Advent and Hanukkah comes at the right time. And I believe it does. And I believe now is the time to be patient, to believe that God's with us and He's seeing everything going on. He's seeing the evil being done. And I don't think it's wrong to say evil being done on both sides. I don't think that's necessarily wrong. Because there are Palestinians getting killed and hurt that had nothing to do with the war either. And Netanyahu's actions is impacting American Jews. I believe that. But as a state, they must be allowed to defend themselves. I like the idea of going into the Hamas tunnels and flooding them out, drowning them out. That's great. That I agree with. That needs to be more of. But I also believe that these 8 days, these 8 nights where we light the menorah and celebrate Advent need to be of peace. Need to be of understanding that actions in Gaza are impacting our Jewish brothers and sisters here. Because no matter how heinous Hamas is, the pro-Palestinians don't care about the heinousness. They care about advocating for the eradication of the Jewish people. And that is hurtful. That's even allowed to be said without any consequence on the streets of New York. I know there's free speech and everything, but what about hate speech? Isn't there something called hate speech still? Isn't that a thing? Or does that only apply to one side? So it's true, we light the menorah with heavy hearts this year, and we do light the Christmas tree with heavy hearts this year. But with the same message of calmness, of coming together, of unity. And maybe of recognition that God's got this. No matter how hateful the streets of New York may sound with the pro-Palestinian forces, God's got this. And Emmanuel will come once again. And I love this rendition of God in countries, or for King in countries. O come, Emmanuel. But it's true. He will come. God will come and ransom captive Israel. More this week on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network.